Proceed right now with introducing the indictment to you, and then the mayor will speak, the county executive, and then we'll save questions for after that. So the indictment was just filed 15 minutes ago. It's an indictment against the defendant, Calvin J. Vickers, Jr. It's an 8-count indictment. The first count charges him with aggravated murder for the death of Officer Anthony Mazurkiewicz. The second count charges him with murder in the second degree, again for the death of Officer Mazurkiewicz. The third count is attempt to commit the crime of aggravated murder for the intent to attempt to kill Officer Sino Sang. The fourth count is attempt to commit the crime of murder in the second degree for Officer Sino Sang. The fifth count, assault in the second degree for causing injury to Officer Sino Sang. The sixth count, another count of assault in the second degree for causing physical injury to Tamaya Walker. The seventh count, criminal possession of a weapon in the second degree under the intent to use the same unlawfully theory. And the eighth count, criminal possession of a weapon in the second degree for possession not in home or place of business. And again, this is the indictment. It was filed this morning. We'll be able to provide you copies after this press conference, and at the end of the speakers I'll be happy to answer any questions, but again, we're going to be limited to what is contained within the indictment. And now I'd like to call the mayor up to the podium.
Thank you. Again, I want to extend my condolences to the family of Officer Tony Mazurkiewicz and wish Officer Sino Sang a speedy recovery. And I also want to commend the men and women of the Rochester Police Department who have continued throughout this tragedy, have been on the job and have been on the job in a major way. Working with partners to take 2 guns off the street last night. Myself and the council president were on Clinton Avenue and witnessed the hard work that these men and women are doing on a daily basis, even in the midst of their grief. They have not retreated from the job, and they continue to do the work. I want to thank the district attorney for her work in making sure that Officer Mazurkiewicz's life will not be lived in vain, because justice will be served for this individual that thought that he could come and wreak havoc on the city of Rochester and get away with it. He will not get away with it. This will be adjudicated in a court of law, obviously, but Rochester is safer with this individual off the streets. We have great work to do in our community to combat gun violence. But right now, at this press conference today, I am just so pleased that this indictment has been served up and that justice will be served in this case. And again, I want to thank all of the partners in law enforcement from local, federal, and state for their work. I want to commend the chief for his work on this, and again, just thank the brave men and women of the Rochester Police Department for their steadfast work and leadership during this trying time. This is not only a nightmare for them and the Mazurkiewicz family, but it's a nightmare for our city. But the way we drive out darkness is to bring in more light, and the way to bring light is by making sure that we have justice. And I'm convinced that justice will be done in this case. Thank you.
Good morning. I want to start by thanking District Attorney Dorley for inviting me here today, and I want to thank District Attorney, you and your team, for securing this indictment. Earlier this week, we gathered together to grieve and honor a fallen hero. And again, I want to extend my condolences to the family of Officer Mazurkiewicz and his brother and sisters in the Rochester Police Department. Today is about justice for Officer Anthony Mazurkiewicz, for Officer Sang and their families in this community. Today is about sending a message that there are consequences to violence and murder. Public safety is fundamental to the future of our city and our county, and public safety is being challenged right now, and we must answer that challenge with action. Too many of our days see gang violence and shootings with little regard to innocent bystanders caught in the crossfire. Families and children, they're not feeling safe in their homes. Like the mayor and District Attorney Dorley, I am sickened by the violence plaguing our streets. My commitment to you will be to continue to provide as much resources and support to keep our residents and our protectors safe. These shootings must stop, and the shooters must face consequences. And that must be what today is about. Tony Mazurkiewicz was murdered protecting our community. On the worst day of their professional careers, the brave men and women of the Rochester Police Department, they did their job. While knowing that they lost a comrade with another shot in the line of duty, they apprehended the suspect. They continue to do their jobs to protect the safety of this community, a job they continue to do today, despite their immeasurable loss, and continue to risk their own safety on our behalf. Today is about justice for Tony Mazurkiewicz and for all of the innocent victims suffering from this ongoing wave of violence. At Monday's memorial service, Tony's youngest daughter, Bryce, said her father has always gone above and beyond, not only for her and her family, but for all of us in Rochester. And all of us in Rochester need to go above and beyond to ensure the public safety that Tony Mazurkiewicz gave his life for. So once again, I want to thank all the members in law enforcement who are here today, who are out serving our community every day. And as a former chief administrator for the district attorney, I've seen firsthand the work that the men and women do in the district attorney's office, and I want to thank them for their swift action. I want to thank them for the work that they do every day, the entire team there, to not just secure this indictment, but to keep all of us safe in our community. Thank you.
And actually, before I take questions, I neglected to introduce two of the most important people on my staff right now who are working on this case with me, Assistant District Attorney Matthew Schwartz and Assistant District Attorney Lisa Gray, and they will be assisting me in this prosecution. And now, does anyone have any questions? Wendy?
There were some discussion about why was it the charge of first-degree murder because this is a police officer. Can you explain that?
Well, obviously, I'm not going to comment on the evidence, but the defendant was taken into custody, shortly after the killing, and the men and women of the Rochester Police Department, specifically major crimes, they had a lot of information to gather. So when they filed the complaint, there was still a lot of information that needed to be, looked into, and there was, additional evidence that we presented to a grand jury, and based on the evidence before the grand jury, I decided to give them the option of voting the charge of aggravated murder.
Did they have the option of first-degree or no?
That was my decision to do aggravated murder over first-degree murder.
Can you explain the basic difference between aggravated murder and second-degree murder from a legal perspective?
Sure. The aggravated murder is the killing of the police officer in the line of duty, and the allegation is that the defendant knew or reasonably should have known that the individual was a police officer at the time of his actions, and that the defendant was over the age of 18. Essentially, the elements of murder in the first degree for a police officer, aggravated murder, are the same, although the sentencing ramifications are different. If the defendant is convicted of aggravated murder, the only possibility is life without the possibility of parole. It's different under murder in the first degree.
Sandra, can you give us some insight as to why you think he was here in the first place in Rochester?
I really don't want to comment on that. Again, I don't want to get into the evidence. I was here simply to announce the charges in the indictment. I don't want to try this case in the press. I believe we will be, probably looking at a speedy trial in this and be able to try this case in the courtroom where it belongs.
I just think I'm asking on behalf of the citizens of our community
Yeah,
who are concerned that a 21-year-old who
Right.
and got out of prison 2 months ago.
Right.
Ends up in Rochester and kills a police officer.
Exactly. I can tell you that. I believe he was released from the Boston Department of Corrections on May 24th of 2022, and he ended up here in Rochester.
And I think the public wants to know why.
Yeah. And I'm not going to comment on that further, Berkeley. But he was not a Rochester resident. He was just released from prison. He was here, and now he is accused of killing a police officer.
Could you explain, if possible, why you think he knew or should have reasonably known that they were police officers?
Right. And again, I can't get into the facts, but again, the standard is that the defendant knew or reasonably should have known. And I believe that, there's evidence to support that, and hence that's why he's charged as in the indictment.
Is there anything more you can tell us about Vickers at all, about his background and charges that he faced in the past?
We are working very closely with law enforcement in Boston. We know that he has a long juvenile record starting from the age of 12 years old where there was an assault against a police officer. He's got numerous charges of possessing a weapon, and that information is readily available if you Google it, and that was confirmed for us by the Boston Police Department. And again, he was released from Boston Corrections for serving time for possession of a weapon, or their equivalent in Massachusetts. There, the sentence was 2.5 to 3 years.
Sanders, I wonder if you could give the public some sense of what kind of punishment he's looking for if he's convicted of the most serious charge.
Right. So with aggravated murder, if the defendant is convicted of that crime, the court has no other option but life without the possibility of parole. But here you also have, not only is Officer Mazurkiewicz, our victim here, he also attempted to cause the death to Officer Sino Sang, caused physical injury to him. That could also be consecutive time, as well as under a transferred intent theory to Maya Walker, who was sitting in her living room. And I believe, she's, talk to the press, her name is out there, so she's a 15-year-old woman who lives in the neighborhood.
Was it his bullet that struck her?
And I can't comment on the evidence.
Do you have a date where he'll be arraigned on that?
We were hoping to be able to have it today, but we should have it by the end of the day, hopefully, or by tomorrow morning at the latest. Again, just call my office, or we can, announce it somehow.
Chief Smith, I wonder if you could share your thoughts with the public on this indictment.
Well, we are extremely grateful to the hard work that the district attorney has put into this thus far, and we are confident that we will have a, successful adjudication, and that in the end justice will be served.
And Mike, can you speak on behalf of the police officers in the union?
I'll only say this, out of respect for this system to go forward, and the way it should go forward, we're going to reserve our comments. But believe me, I'd like to say some comments.
Yes, Gary.
One more quick one. I don't, since I assume at the arraignment time we have to announce what you say, you made any statement?
Yes, actually. No, he did not. He gave us his name and date of birth and a statement that he doesn't live anywhere. And that will be attached to a 71030 notice that will be filed along, or that will be presented to defense at arraignment. Anyone else? Oh, Wendy.
I don't want to take away from this at all, but we've been asked to ask you if you could comment in regards to what you've already said in regards to recusing yourself from the Seltzer case.
Wendy, it's really not the appropriate time right now. Right now, and for the last week and a half, since the evening of July 21st, I have been with the men and women of the Rochester Police Department, and they can attest to it, and I've been working around the clock on this matter. That's where my attention is focused right now.